It was supposed to be the outdoor adventure of a lifetime. My 3 closest friends and I had eagerly booked a week-long guided hiking and camping trip in the remote White Mountain Range with an experienced guide named Tom. The tour company boasted that Tom was their most seasoned expert on navigating the area, having practically grown up exploring those very mountains. When we all met Tom on the first day, he looked exactly like the rugged backcountry guide we had envisioned. With his thick salt and pepper beard, weathered face tanned from years in the sun, and a massive backpack piled high with gear, he appeared ready to lead us on an unforgettable trek. During the first couple days on the trail, as we hiked through pine forests and up rocky ridges, he regaled us with detailed stories about the local wildlife, rare vegetation, and even some of the more mysterious tales that the area was known for. We felt lulled into a sense of security by his apparent confidence and extensive knowledge of the route ahead. On the 3rd night, after setting up camp in a clearing, Tom headed off to get water from a nearby mountain stream as the rest of us prepared dinner. The sun sank below the peaks and darkness fell, but he still hadn't returned. We started to feel uneasy and called out for him, but heard no reply other than the whispering wind. Hours passed without any sign of Tom as we debated what to do next. At dawn, we quickly packed up the tents and rationed our remaining food and water, hoping to locate our missing guide. That's when we realized with dawning horror that the trail markers had completely disappeared. Somehow we were off the path we had been diligently following for the past few days and were now in totally unmarked territory. Desperately consulting our topo maps provided no clues, as wherever we found ourselves was not documented on any chart. The terrain rapidly grew steeper and the underbrush thicker as we continued bushwhacking onward, hoping to reconnect with the main trail. Strange animal calls and fleeting figures darting between the trees put us further on edge. It was as if the deeper we went into the forests and valleys, the more wild and unpredictable the environment became. By the 5th day, we had exhausted our food supply and struggled to find fresh water as our own meager reserves dwindled. Still no sign of Tom or anyone else who could help, exhausted, hungry, and increasingly despairing. We knew that we were well and truly lost and would likely perish alone in this untamed wilderness if we couldn't find our way out. As the sun set, we huddled together in the dark, clinging to a vague hope that Tom had gone to get help and rescue would still come. Another full day passed with no sign of civilization as we grew weaker, our throats parched and feet blistered. We heard distant shrieks and howls at night that sounded nothing like the typical wildlife we had heard when hiking with Tom earlier. The noises sent shivers through our whole bodies. Stumbling blindly onward through the trees in the inky blackness, we called out again and again for the guide who had led us into this nightmare. Only silence answered. It was on the 8th day when by some miracle we crested a wooded hilltop and saw a dirt road cutting through the valley below. We laughed and cried, scarcely believing our luck. With our remaining strength, we made our way down the rocky slope and walked that dusty road until finally a park ranger found us. I can still remember the overwhelming relief I felt at seeing another human being after so long alone. We eagerly recounted the bizarre disappearance of Tom and how he had led us so far off the marked trails into a part of the White Mountains that were on none of our maps. The rangers were dumbfounded, saying there were no documented trails matching the route we described. As for Tom, he was nowhere to be found. The tour company had no records of any guide by that name ever working for them. To this day, I do not know for certain who or what led us out into the wilderness on that ill-fated hike. Was it simple negligence or some darker purpose that put us through such a harrowing ordeal? I may never fully understand what happened during those 8 days lost in the mountains. But I do know that the White Mountains still call out to me in my dreams, and the shared memories of fear from that time will stay with us forever. Though we survived, a part of me remains deep in that lost wilderness, calling out for the guide who led us astray. My friends and I were so thrilled for our tropical island getaway. We had discovered an incredible deal online for an all-inclusive stay at a resort on a remote island in the Pacific. The beachfront cabins looked absolutely incredible, nestled among swaying palm trees right along the turquoise waters. The photos showed stunning vistas, tantalizing food, and amenities galore. We gleefully booked one of their last remaining cabins to indulge in a week of paradise. The island could only be reached by a small plane from the nearest airport. As we flew over crisp blue waters, I gazed out the window feeling giddy, already dreaming of the adventures to come. When we landed, a driver from the resort greeted us warmly with vibrant flower leaves in an assortment of colors. The fragrant flowers were our first taste of the hospitality to come. During the drive to the resort, our chipper driver pointed out local sites and provided an enthusiastic overview of the island's history and culture. By the time we pulled up to the resort's grand pavilion, we were completely smitten. The resort was even more stunning in person. Our cabin featured its own cozy porch just steps from the gentle waves. Our bags had already been lovingly placed inside the charming bungalow-style room. Delighted staff members showed us around the grounds, which were meticulously maintained. The palm tree-lined paths, vibrant exotic flowers, and sweeping ocean views looked like paradise. We couldn't wait to explore every inch of this intoxicating place. We spent the first day reveling in the resort's amenities. We lounged on cushy beach chairs as attendants brought fruity cocktails from the poolside bar. That night, we dined beachside on the catch of the day while being serenaded by local musicians. The staff catered to our every need, often before we even knew we wanted something. We were thoroughly impressed by the over-the-top service and luxurious atmosphere. It exceeded even our highest expectations. Despite the ideal setting, I couldn't help but notice some eccentricities. The staff always seemed to be hovered right nearby, watching our every move with plastered-on smiles. The other guests kept oddly to themselves, avoiding eye contact and whispering as we walked by. I figured maybe they were honeymooners desiring privacy in paradise. The imposing fence that encircled the entire resort also struck me as unusual. That night, we decided to take an evening stroll down to the beach. We made an unsettling discovery. The resort was surrounded by not just a fence, but a towering stone wall and imposing iron gate. Quite odd for a luxury resort, we thought. The next morning, things got even stranger. As I was showering, the power abruptly shut off across the entire resort, leaving me in darkness. No staff came to address the issue or even provide an update. The water also stopped running shortly after the blackout. We dressed in the dark and cautiously made our way to the open-air restaurant. Again, the other guests averted their eyes and sat in silence. The staff, however, cheerfully served tropical fruit, pastries, and coffee as if nothing was amiss. After about an hour, the power flickered back on, but an unshakable sense of unease now lingered. Throughout the day, bizarre events compounded our anxiety. At the pool, I noticed a guest had vivid bruising around her wrists, which she tried to conceal when she saw my attention. Later in the afternoon, a heated argument broke out in the cabin next to ours, but was silent again by the time I walked over to check on the disturbance. No matter what oddities occurred, the staff maintained their unsettling, upbeat demeanor. Their unwavering smiles seemed less and less comforting. By the third night, my friends and I were thoroughly spooked. We decided to have dinner delivered to our cabin instead of going to the restaurant. When a staff member brought over plates that in no way resembled our orders, our worst fears were confirmed. It became horrifyingly clear that something sinister was at play here, and we needed to escape at once. But how could we flee this fortress-like resort and its crazed captors? We realized our very lives could be at stake. In the morning, we hastily devised an escape plan. My friend pretended to go for a jog while I feigned illness to keep the staff's focus on me. Once away from the grounds, my friend managed to wave down a passing taxi on the remote road and returned with 2 police officers. But rather than help us, they spoke privately with the manager, who insisted we were simply mistaken. My heart sank as 2 staff members firmly escorted us back to our cabin to pack up and leave, our passports now conveniently missing. That night, in a desperate attempt to save ourselves, we quietly snuck out and maneuvered through the dense tropical foliage until we reached the fence. Just as we climbed it and tumbled to freedom, the bright lights suddenly flashed on as staff rapidly approached in golf carts. We sprinted down the road, waving our arms wildly until a car stopped for us. At the station, the police finally took our statements seriously. We returned to the resort to free the other poor souls, but found it completely deserted. No guests, no staff, not a trace. Just an empty ghost resort. Without answers, we left the island that very night, haunted and horrified. I'm just grateful we escaped when we did, though I'm afraid the chilling memories may torment me forever. When my family and I booked our vacation to the remote island of Isla Perdida, it seemed like the perfect tropical getaway. The glossy travel brochure showed pristine white sand beaches dotted with palm trees and hammocks. It depicted happy couples sipping colorful cocktails while their children built sandcastles. Beyond the beaches, lush green jungles promised guided hikes to scenic waterfalls and wildlife spotting. The few online reviews raved about the warm, welcoming locals and the relaxed pace of life. We imagined spending long, lazy days swimming and sunbathing, dining on fresh seafood at beachside cafes, and unwinding from our hectic lives. The island seemed like an undiscovered paradise, one which we couldn't wait to escape to. Little did we know we were walking blindly into a carefully disguised nightmare from which we could not escape. The first hint of trouble came shortly after our small 6-seat propeller plane landed on the tiny tree-lined airstrip. As we climbed out of the stuffy cabin, the young pilot quickly unloaded our bags and locked the plane door behind us. When I joked about hoping he wouldn't leave without us, he grimaced, mumbling only, "Be careful," before rushing back inside the cockpit. The plane engine roared to life moments later as the aircraft sped down the runway and lifted off before I could ponder the pilot's ominous warning. A battered Jeep awaited us, the resort's faded logo barely visible on its side. Our driver, a wrinkled old man wearing a threadbare shirt, loaded our bags in the back without a word. The bumpy dirt road curved through the dense jungle interior before eventually opening up to reveal the resort's collection of thatched roof bungalows. Though rustic and weather-worn, the bungalows appeared clean and comfortable, with whitewashed walls and colorful woven hammocks on each porch. Ours sat steps from the gentle waves lapping at the pristine golden sand beach, postcard perfect. My wife and I were assigned bungalow while our grumbling teenage son and daughter unloaded their bags into bungalow next door. Eager to explore, we quickly changed into our swimsuits. We slathered on sunscreen and headed towards the beckoning ocean, cares melting away as we strolled barefoot across the soft sand. Yet despite the idyllic setting, an unsettling sense of emptiness pervaded the place. Though it was mid-morning, only a handful of guests were visible, scattered silently like statues across the resort's vast expanse. When I tried to greet the few people we passed, they stared back with unfriendly, suspicious looks before pointedly turning away. Their hostility confused me, so unlike the cheerful locals described by reviewers online. The resort staff stood around whispering among themselves, falling abruptly silent as we drew near. Their manner struck me as evasive and tense, though I tried to convince myself I was imagining things. My growing unease only intensified when I approached the beachside bar in search of an icy cocktail. The gangly young bartender kept his eyes downcast as he took my order, barely mumbling a response to my friendly remarks about the weather. A nervous energy surrounded him as he moved about behind the counter, like a deer poised to bolt from a wolf at any moment. He handed me the vibrant drink before hurrying away, still avoiding eye contact. Something was very wrong here beneath this place's postcard fade, I realized with growing dread. But I had no idea yet just how much danger we were in. That first evening we enjoyed a fresh seafood dinner at the resort's open-air restaurant, its thatched roof lit warmly by tiki torches. Only a few other couples filled the scattered tables near us, picking at their meals in silence. There was none of the lively socializing you would expect on a tropical vacation. The emptiness of the place was unnerving, like a ghost town where only apparitions walked. We ate quickly, then headed back to our adjoining bungalows, comforted to know our family was all under one roof. The gentle rhythm of the waves lulled us to sleep, allowing us to forget our uneasy first day. The next morning, sunlight streaming through our window stirred us awake, eager to explore more of the island's beauty. But over breakfast on the restaurant patio, the staff continued to act jittery and evasive. When I asked the receptionist about arranging a jungle hiking tour, her eyes widened in alarm before she stammered that no guides were available. In fact, she strongly discouraged us from leaving the boundaries of the resort beach area, insisting the jungle was far too dangerous for tourists. Her insistence seemed odd given the brochure's promises of guided hiking and wildlife viewing. When I gently pressed her, she turned abruptly away, claiming she had urgent work to attend to. A chill went through me at her behavior as I realized the staff were keeping secrets about this island paradise. My fears were confirmed when I struck up a conversation on the beach with Tony, an older British guest. He told me in hushed tones that this was his second week on the island after being unable to book a return flight. The resort staff gave only vague excuses about flight delays and cancellations whenever he inquired. He was starting to suspect they never intended to let him leave this island again. Tony's revelation filled me with dread. I looked around at the few guests scattered across the beach, overcome by the sense that we were all trapped here. When I told my wife about Tony's frightening suspicions, her face went pale. We whispered urgently back and forth, debating our next move. Should we demand the staff return us home immediately? But we couldn't risk upsetting them until we knew what sinister secrets they were hiding. In the end, we reluctantly agreed not to tell the kids anything to avoid panicking them. But we knew we had to find a way off this island before meeting the same ominous fate as previous guests. That night at dinner, the resort's owner stopped by our table, eager to hear how we were enjoying our stay so far. As he assured us we would grow to love the island, I noticed a slick edge to his smile, like a salesman desperate to close a deal or a cunning predator seeking to trap his prey. We forced smiles, making small talk and pretending to be reassured while secretly planning our escape. We realized he had no intention of ever allowing us to leave this supposed tropical paradise. Just before dessert arrived, I excused myself to find the restroom. On my way back, Tony discreetly pressed a small folded map into my hand, showing a route through the jungle to the hidden airstrip. "Midnight behind Bungalow 12, he whispered. "We'll get to that plane or die trying." I slipped the map into my pocket, my heart pounding with renewed hope. We would not let our family vanish without a trace like all those other doomed guests. Under the moon's faint silver light, we slipped from our bungalow, carefully picking our way along the palm-shrouded path indicated on Tony's map. Strange animal sounds echoed from the pitch-black jungle surrounding us as we hurried towards possible liberation. Mosquitoes swarmed our sweat-soaked skin and vines clawed at our legs as we forced our way through the oppressive vegetation. After what seemed like hours, we finally stepped into the small clearing, grass still flattened from the plane's recent landing. Yet no aircraft waited there now. No sign of Tony either, besides the hand-drawn map still clutched in my trembling hand. Then the wind carried the unmistakable iron stench of blood from the open doorway of the weathered storage shed. Though I already knew what horror waited inside, I had to face it directly. Holding my breath, I shined my phone's light into the small space, bodies recoiling from the nightmarish sight. Tony lay sprawled on the dirt floor in a congealed pool of dark blood, limbs twisted into unnatural positions. His lifeless eyes stared up at me in frozen terror, creating an image that will stalk my nightmares until my dying day. We fled in silent panic through the ravenous jungle that had claimed poor Tony so brutally. As the resort emerged into view again, faint sunlight beginning to glow on the horizon, despair consumed me. We were doomed prisoners on this malevolent island masquerading as a tropical idyll. Whatever sinister secrets the staff were protecting, they would never let us leave alive. Our dream vacation had become a living nightmare that would end only in our disappearance or death. As the remaining hours of our lives ticked away, I prayed someone would one day find this journal, the sole record of our family's fate. Please learn from our tragic mistake and do not let greed or beauty blind you to peril. If you receive an offer too good to be true, walk away while you still can, or you may also find yourself lost forever on the accursed island of Isla Perdida.